My name is Katie Booth, and I lead corporate social responsibility for the Americas at SAP. I have a very non-traditional work day. Our charter within our team, and my team has about 16 people on it globally at SAP. SAP has about 110,000 employees. So we're a pretty small team, and our team is really charged with creating social impact in a positive way. We focus on the social part of ESG, and our programs really hope to positively benefit equality, education, economic mobility for people. We have three main programs or pillars that we focus on, and this has also been evolving quite rapidly since COVID. So those are focused on social entrepreneurship or impact entrepreneurship, and really building out a base for this movement. This idea that you can still make profit and you can also have a positive impact in the world, whether it is environmental or social. So we have a lot of work focused on that. Our second area of focus is building future skills. So this has to do with giving people opportunities that they wouldn't have otherwise, and getting them into jobs that raise the income level of their family significantly, skill programs that help them build skills so they can have a higher quality of life than they currently have. And then the third one is about mobilizing our employees and getting our employees engaged. And our focus there is shifting dramatically. So we're moving towards pro bono, or employee consulting, volunteering consulting being the main practice that our team supports globally. It's really interesting to have a social impact role in a capitalist society at a for-profit company. Yeah. Because companies can do good in the world, but by definition, they're really profit-driven. So when I think about the values and how I try to lead and how I try to build impact, I think all the time about partnerships with nonprofits. I think about how do you create strong partnerships that don't ask too much of them, that don't ask them to go outside their mission, because we won't be able to fund them forever. So I'm always at the beginning stage of a partnership thinking about the sustainability of the organization. How does the work that we're doing set them up for their strategic plan as well, in addition to the goals that we have? So I think my core value is true mission alignment at like the deepest sense of the word. This is really different than how, frankly, we ran CSR in our company and how I think a lot of companies operate, which is much more project driven. But I feel quite strongly that this is a model that benefits both sides when there's an inherent power dynamic at play. Yeah. So I'm always thinking about sort of the long term.
What led you to be in this work?
When I was in college, I learned of AmeriCorps. My best friend did an AmeriCorps program, and I was like, oh, that sounds good. So I signed up. The program I wanted to do wasn't a fit, so I ended up doing City Year. And every day I wore like a bomber jacket that said City Year, and it had a brand on it. Like it had a company logo on it. That was not City Year. And I had never before thought of how companies support the social impact sector. This was not something that ever crossed my mind as a career path. So I became super interested in the role that I have now, which is corporate social responsibility, and that intersection between social impact and for-profit companies. And so when I finished City Year, I went to another nonprofit that's super corporate called Kaboom. So I traveled around building playgrounds, funded by big corporations, and one of those companies was SAP. So I met SAP probably 15 years ago, and then worked at a couple of other national nonprofits, and then sort of a new position became available there. And so I was able to sort of make the switch to the corporate side and have been at SAP for almost 11 years.
What would you say is like one challenge that either you're currently working through at your role, or just one challenge that you perceive that needs to be sort of fixed or like looked into in the particular industry that you sort of work in?
Our programs, and I am so lucky to be able to do the kind of work that I do that I think is really on the cutting edge of corporate social impact. But that means a lot of the measures of success, how we've always been measured and how the industry measures us and how our own executive teams measure us, no longer matter. But we don't yet have new measures for them. So, for example, if we say, actually, we want to focus on building the system and having systems change work, for example, we want there to be a conversation happening about funding and investing more in innovative technology for education for underrepresented youth. How do you measure that? You can't measure volunteer hours. You can't measure lives impacted. You can't measure all these things which are the questions that everybody's asking to measure the work. So I think that's my biggest challenge is how do you continue to grow when all the work that you do has been measured based off of indicators that we don't believe actually measure the work? Because it's one thing to get feedback on your program, but it's an entirely different skill set to be able to not only interpret that feedback, but also have an understanding of how that could modify the path of your organization. And I think a lot of the findings we've had so far with this kind of work are that the appetite is not there to make the changes because there's still significant challenges with interpreting the results. So I think getting the results is great, but you have to take it like 3 or 4 steps further. And that has to be baked in from the beginning, right? You can't kind of add that on at the end.
So for someone, a young adult, like sort of either entering the workforce today or even entry mid-level, right? Looking forward, looking up, right? What would be some advice that you would give them?
I would say be curious. And also understand that there's a really significant generational difference. I think it's really important because the people that are older generally are the people that are in power. Doesn't mean what they're doing is right or it's the right way, but that's just the fact of it. So I would say be curious and really be respectful with your curiosity, but don't stop being curious. And I think it's about asking the questions about, tell me how you got to this position, not like your job, but like your position on this topic. Or tell me some of the history about this, because people really like to tell the stories of the things that they've built. And once you have an understanding of that, it's going to make it a lot easier to collaborate, even if you don't agree with the project or the direction. Always be thinking about why might they be doing it this way, instead of just saying, okay, this is how we do it. And I think that will get people really far, because it will allow you to be in spaces where you might not be if you didn't ask questions. Thinking about the parts of your job that you like doing, not what you're good at and not what's necessarily the most challenging, but what are parts of your job that you truly enjoy, that don't drain you, and trying to find ways to do that more. And the things that your teammates like and don't like, and things that fuel them or drain them, trying to learn about that and trying to balance out your team based off of trying to give people projects that fuel them, that they really enjoy. And I think that's something that being able to identify as a human what you like to do, and sort of, it's not even, again, what you're great at, but what makes you feel good and passionate and fired up. Being able to work in that space, regardless of your career, regardless of the job, regardless of the sector, is something that we should always just be checking in with ourselves about.